You're welcome to today's video on road network design. And under this road network design, we're going to be looking into traffic intersection. So before we go into the definition or going into the aspect of the concept of traffic intersection, the first thing I want us to be able to do is to break these two words. We have the word traffic, in which we're used to. If you've been following with us, with this channel, we've talked about traffic over and over in most of the videos. And we have the word intersection. And when we're talking about traffic, we know traffic is the movement of vehicles or people along the road. So if we are going to be taking it beyond just the road, we have it's also the movement of the shape. We have the movement of shapes. We have the movement of aircraft, movement of trains along a route. But because today we're working basically on road network, so we're going to be limiting it on vehicles. So the movement of vehicles or people along the road or a route is what we call the traffic. Now we have the word intersection. The intersection can we can derive the word intersect from that intersection, and in Latin, intersect means intersectors, which means to cut across. So if we know traffic, it's all about the movement of vehicles or people along a route, and we know intersect means to cut across. So the ability of vehicles to cut across each other on any road or route is what we call traffic intersection. So what we're trying to say is when we're looking into traffic intersection, it is just more like a point where two or more roads meet or cross, or they intersect, allowing vehicles and pedestrians to change directions or continue on their path. So the ability of them changing, or the opportunity or the ability to change direction and continue on their path, is that point where they can do that is what we call the traffic intersection. And we know that traffic intersection is one of the most critical parts of any road network because it helps to manage traffic and improve the safety of the road users. When we're talking about road users here, we're not just talking about the vehicles alone. We're talking about the pedestrians, we're talking about the cyclists, a lot, all of them all coming together under this category. So one of the most important part of any transportation network is the ability to to improve safety. If that safety is guaranteed, then there will be um, an efficiency of that system. So, but what we're looking at here is the ability to be able to have a traffic intersection in place helps us to ensure that safety and also to manage the flow of vehicles. So I think this I've been able to explain this under what traffic intersection is all about. It's just that point where the the meet on the road. So where they meet and change directions on the road is what we call a traffic intersection. And there are lots of components when we're looking into traffic intersection, because some of the components or what makes up a traffic intersection, we have the traffic signal. The traffic signal helps us to control the flow of vehicles and pedestrians. That is where we have the traffic signals, just like the traffic lights, the red, yellow, and the green. And we also have every other forms of traffic signals that helps to manage, control the flow of vehicles and also pedestrians. So that is one of the components we have in a traffic intersection. I think we also have the stop signs and the yield signs. These signs also help us to control the right of way, and that is another component of a traffic intersection. We have the pedestrian crossing is also another component. We have the lanes and markings. We can see some of the lanes. We can see the markings on the road that shows vehicles, or the lanes where some vehicles are going, maybe the right turn lane, the left turn lane, the true lane. So all these things are what makes up the traffic intersection, because they are very much important to know. It helps vehicles and drivers to know which lane they are meant to, or they're expected to stay if they want to go in any form of direction. You cannot expect the true lane or a driver driving on the road to stand on the true lane when he's going on the right turn lane. So the markings helps to differentiate the places where different vehicles are expected to be based on the part of the road or the part of the intersection they will be using, whether it is the right turn, the left turn, or the true lane. So the lanes and the markings helps with that. Then we have the turning lanes. Then we already talk about the right turn, the left turn lanes, and the true lane. So all these things are what makes up the the traffic intersection. So the traffic intersection is just not a more, it's beyond just a point. But within that point, there are other elements, there are other component that makes up that point that helps traffic flow and efficiency of movement of vehicles for the safety of road users to be possible. And that is why all these other components coming into this helps to ensure that efficiency. Then we have the categories of traffic intersection. We have two categories of traffic intersection, though under each category we have types. The first category of traffic intersection we have is what we call the at-grade intersection, and the second one is what we call the grade separation intersection. So what do we mean by at grade intersection? At grade intersection is just where two or more roads meet or cross at the same level. The major word or the major part of this definition is that it has to be on the same level. That is the same elevation, the same plane. No, not there is no form of any form of flyovers or overpass. But when they all meet at the same level, then that is what we call at grade intersection. And under this at grade intersection, that is where we have other types of traffic intersections like the roundabouts. We have the T intersections. We're going to be looking into all those types soon. But when what we're trying to say is that on any road, whenever it is on a plane level, is what we call the at grade intersection. But when it's beyond just a plane level, it's having other forms of levels. When it comes to when we talk about the overpass, we have the underpass, having flyovers. Then that is what we call the grade separated intersection. From the word separated, that it shows that there are separation on that road, and which might come in form of overpass, it can be come in form of underpass, or maybe it might be in form of a flyovers. So the main concept here is that they have different heights and levels. But when we're talking about at grade intersection, they are on the same level, but not different heights and levels. So this helps to have a good understanding of the difference between at grade intersection and grade separated intersection. Grades at grade intersection, the same level, the same elevation. Grade separated intersection, they have different heights, flyovers, underpass, overpass. So they're different. So under the at grade intersection, yeah, like we said, they're on the same elevation. So we now have these types of at grade intersections. The first one we have here is the T intersection. The T intersection is when one road ends and meets another at a right angle and it's forming a T. That is what we call a T intersection. So that means there is an end road. If we're going to be saying, when we're going to be putting this in this in a traffic terminology, there is no true lane. We don't have a true lane, so it's either a right turn lane or a left turn lane at that point. So when we have that kind of road network, then that is what we call the T intersection. That is, it doesn't have a true lane, but it only has a right turn lane and a left turn lane, and both of them are at angle 90 degree. So when they are at angle 90 degree is what we call the T intersection. And the difference between the T intersection and the Y intersection is that the T intersection meets as a 90-degree angle. That is, it's always a right 90-degree, maybe right angle, or to the other side. So right angle 90 degree. But the Y intersection is not at a point of 90 degree, but it is giving this an acute angle uh, intersection. That is maybe something maybe around 60 degree, 70 degree. This is this is a picture of a T intersection, which is also called a three-leg intersection. You can see at the end of this road, there is no true lane. We don't have a true lane, but we only have the right turn lane and we have the left turn lane. So this is an example of a T intersection, and we can see the traffic sign here. This is the traffic sign. In one of the videos, I already explained the difference between a traffic sign and a traffic signal. So we can see this is just telling vehicles, incoming vehicles, that we have a T intersection ahead, which can either be to the right or to the left. So when vehicles or drivers, when they see this, when if they are going on the left turn lane, they know they have to be on the other part of this of the road, on the left side of the road. But when you're going to the right side, then you stay on the right side of the road. So this is just to help them have an understanding of what the road condition is ahead. Now this is the Y intersection. Now as you can see, it's not in a 90-degree angle, but instead is in an acute angle form, and that is why we can see it in the Y form, letter Y, and the same way we have for the T intersection, we have it for letter T. So this is letter Y, so which stands for the Y intersection. So the difference between the T intersection and the Y intersection is the T intersection forms a right angle, which is can also be what we call right angle, yes, 90-degree, and what the Y intersection forms an acute angle, which might not acute angles are angles that are less than 60-degree. So maybe less than 90-degree, sorry, which can be 60-degree, 70-degree, whatever it is, based on the construction or the design of the road. So then they can see the movement here. So we have the next one, which is the cross, which most of the time we also call the four-way intersection. This is when two roads cross each other, they forming maybe X, or sometimes forming a plus sign. And this is an example of a cross X intersection. We can see vehicles can either go through this. The difference between this and the Y intersection and the T intersection is both those two doesn't have a true lane, but in the case of a cross intersection there is a true lane. So we can see either vehicles moving in a true lane, crossing to the other side of the road, or moving in a right direction, that is right turn lane, or taking the left turn lane. And in some cases we can have the U-turn lane also, that is for vehicles that wants to turn, like we can say you can have a turn lane here. So this is what we call a cross X intersection, which gives the ability for a through lane. Then the next one we have is what we call the roundabout, which is also called a traffic circle. This is an example of a roundabout or a traffic circle. So that is vehicle travel around a central island in one direction. You can say just that's around. This is the highland. This you can say the highland. Then they move in that direction around it. So vehicles travels around this island in that one direction, and when that happens, this is what we call a roundabout. The moment we can see the highland, so that you can see the difference between a roundabout and a cross intersection. We don't have that central island. Then the next one is what we call the staggered intersection. One thing about a staggered intersection is that when we have a road intersection where a main road is intersected by two or more roads that are not at the same point, that they are not at the same point, then that is what we call a staggered road. What am I trying to say? When we have any form of T intersections, but they are not sitting at the same point of the road. One of the right angle is in a different point, and the other one is at a different point, but they are not at the same point. That is what we call a staggered intersection. Though the road network leads in different, but they don't stay, or they are not at the same point. An example of that is I have a pictorial. This this is it. You can see they are not at the same point. This should have yielded, we know yielded, but you can see here. So when they do not have the same point, or when two or more roads they are not at the same point. That is what we call a staggered intersection, and this is an example of that. So these are the types of intersection we have at grade intersection. Like I said earlier, at grade intersection means at the same elevation, at the same plane, at the same level on the road. But when we are now moving away from they had grid intersection, that is when we have what we call the grid separated intersection. And we already explained that when they are of different heights, different elevation. Now, when we have them in different heights, different elevations, or maybe flyovers, underpass, overpass, that is what we call a grid separated intersection. So, this is it. So, and we also have different types of it. We have what we call the clover leaf intersection. We have the trumpet so clover leaf interchange. We have the trumpet interchange. We have the diamond interchange. We have the stack interchange. So these are some of the great separated intersection types we have, and we are going to be looking at each of them. Just a picture of each of them. So looking into the first one, which is the clover leaf interchange, is more like a four-leg interchange that uses loop ramps to accommodate left turning movement. And for these interchanges, when we have the four loops, it is regarded as the full cloverleaf interchange. But when it is not having the four, maybe two loops, that is what we call the partial cloverleaf interchange. So this is a picture of the cloverleaf interchange. This is a full cloverleaf interchange. This is just a picture of it. Then the next one is we have the trumpet interchange. I think this is a picture of it, and in most cases it's also more like a three-leg interchange. But this type of road junction uses great separations and loop ramps, and this helps to allow traffic to flow between the main road and a terminal road without directly crossing over or under. So you can see having maybe something you can call a trumpet shape, and sometimes it's also called the T-type interchange, or what we call the three-leg interchange. So this is a picture of it. So this is a clover leaf. Then the third one is what we call the diamond interchange, and this one, it has two intersections, two diagonal entry ramps and two diagonal exit ramps. So we have two diagonal entry into the highway, then we have two diagonal exit ramps. So it's very important to know two diagonal entry ramps and two diagonal exit ramps. In one of the videos, I already explained what we call ramps. It's just a road that leads to the highway. So sometimes we have a signalized ramps, and we have the horn ramp, and a horn ramp, and we have the off ramp. We've explained that before. So, and this is an example of a diagonal interchange. This is just a pictorial example of that. Then the last part we have here is this stack interchange. The stack interchange is also a type of grid separation junction between two controlled access highways that allows for free flowing movement to and from all directions of traffic. So this one, it gives room for flow of movement from all directions of traffic, and that is why we have, when we say the word stack, that is, it is highly stacked. And a picture that helps to portray that is this. You can see it is highly stacked, allowing the free flow of movements to and from all directions of traffic. So it's not limited to a particular direction. It gives room for movement across all directions. And this explains that. So then we move into what we call the traffic control types at intersection. Now, under this traffic control types at the intersection, we have what we call the signalized intersection and what we call the unsignalized intersection. We have the roundabout. We already explained what roundabout is when we move around a central highland. But a simple way to explain the difference between a signalized intersection and unsignalized intersection is that at a signalized intersection, it is controlled by traffic lights. Maybe you can see from the first picture here, there is a traffic light here helping to regulate the movement of vehicles in the right direction. And we know the traffic light has the red, which means vehicles to stop at the time necessary, the yellow when for them to get ready, and the the green when it's time for them to move. And in other road conditions, it's not just only applicable to vehicles alone or drivers. In some road conditions, like popularly seen in China, you can see there are also the pedestrian traffic lights signalize crossing. Also it helps pedestrians to know when to cross or when not to cross also. And I think there are some road conditions what we call a scrambled traffic intersection, where at a certain point, this might not be common in every country, or I think it's only limited to some countries that has the scrambled intersection. And what it means is, at that point when the scrambled intersection is means that at a certain point in the traffic intersection, all vehicles will stop and pedestrians can move in any direction um, at that intersection. So that is what we call the travel traffic intersection, but we're not focusing on that right now. But we're focusing on the traffic intersection, which means that it is controlled with traffic signs, with traffic signals, and traffic light, most especially. But when we're talking about the unsignalized is maybe using yield signs or stop signs. And this is the second picture gives us an example of that. And the third one is the roundabout, that is the circular movement, and this promotes continuous flow, that is continuous flow of vehicle, of movement of vehicle in this. Then we have the last part, which talks about the conditions necessary for effective intersection design. So when we want to design an intersection, so what are the conditions that are very important for us to take into consideration when we are doing this? And some of the points are listed here, and we are going to look into them just briefly, one after the other. So looking at the first one is visibility. When we hear the word visibility, it means there has to be a clear sight where at that point of intersection you must be able to effectively see the other sides of the road effectively. So when we're designing an intersection, it has to have these clear sight lines for all direction. So if it is going to be a T intersection, it has to be clear. There should be a clear sight line. And if it's going to be um, um, the four-way intersection, there has to be that clear sight lines for all directions, not limiting it to only the right of way or the expected or where the vehicle is standing at that particular time. Or so it is very important that there has to be a clear sight line for all directions in that design. And another point is design speed. You know, it must be able to match the expected traffic speed. So whatever speed it is when designing has to we have to make sure it matches the expected traffic speed on that road. And the third point is talking about the geometry, that is the appropriate turning radar, talking about the angles and the land the lane width. All these things needs to be taken into consideration if we are going to be setting up um as a three lane or a four lane or a two lane. We have to take into consideration the ideal 90-degree, the angles, the radii, and the width of the road. If it is going to be an intersection that would involve maybe heavy occupancy vehicles, you also have to take that into consideration in the geometry. Then the next point is the capacity. Capacity talks about the ability to accommodate traffic efficiently. And the ability to accommodate traffic efficiently, it's much more important during peak hours. Peak hours helps us to know if a road intersection can actually effectively accommodate traffic. It is not what the intersection or the intersection can do at off-peak hours, but we are much more concerned. Can it also replicate the same effectiveness during the peak hours? So that is a condition that is also necessary during the intersection design. And another beautiful part is safety measures. There has to be safety measures in place. That is proper signage. There has to be markings, lightings, pedestrian crossing. You know, pedestrians or drivers or road users should be able to navigate through, not just only during the day, but it should also be effective in the night. Maybe through the use of bollards, through the use of effective lightnings at night, through the use of uh, an effective, yeah, effective lightning that helps to ensure that the safety of road users, whether during the day or at night. So, and proper signage. When there is a yield sign, there has to be the yield sign. There has to be the stop sign at relevant places or important places on the road that helps road users or drivers to navigate effectively at the point of intersection. Another point is the drainage. The drainage is the ability to prevent water accumulation. That is also important, most especially in the design of intersections. So there has to be that system or that condition in place to make sure that we don't have water logged around the intersection points. So this has to be taken into consideration when designing the intersection. Then the next point is the signal timing. That is, there has to be this balance cycle length. That is, there has to be coordinate. There has to be a level of coordination with nearby intersections, whereby the movement from one intersection to another intersection, there has to be a level of coordination among those the traffic signs and the signal timing within those intersections. And also, we know there is a lot of conditions that are in place before determining the timing of each intersection. We have to look at the volume of the traffic volume in those areas. We have to take a lot of things into consideration, in which I might not be able to go into now. Maybe we'll have to do that in another video, just explaining what are the conditions in place to determine the length or the duration of or of a signal, of a traffic signal. If it is 10 seconds, if it's 15 seconds. So there is a lot of conditions we also look into before determining that. So we might look into that in another video. And the last part is the accessibility. Accessibility not just only for drivers, but accessibility also for pedestrians, accessibility also for cyclists, accessibility for public transport. So it is very important that that intersection must be able to perform not just the function of safety for drivers, but it must also be able to do the same for pedestrians. It must also be able to do the same for cyclists. Now, most especially, I'm still going to be using China as an example. There is high level of usage of bicycles or e-bikes or motorcycles, which has led to the creation of a separate lane for them, and also that of the pedestrians. So the ability to take into consideration the pedestrian lane, the the bicycle lane, and also the vehicle lane, all these together at the point of intersection, and ensure a free flow movement at the right signal timing for each and every of those road users. It makes it much more accessible, and that makes this condition also very important for effective intersection design. And that will be all on the traffic intersection, and I'll see you in the next video.